Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Magic Hour podcast. I'm your host, Shireen Campbell, and I'm the founder of My Little Magic Shop. One day, I lit a candle and asked for clarity in my professional and life path. Soon after, I was gifted with the message that I'm here to help others go through exactly what I was going through then. And just like that, My Little Magic Shop and the Magic Hour podcast was born. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming back to the Magic Hour podcast. Today, we'll be talking with spiritual medium, Alisa Ozernoy. Alisa, thank you so much for coming to speak with us today. I'm super excited to chat with you some more.
Thank you so much, Shireen, for having me here. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Yay. Okay, so I always like to open up the podcast just to get to know you just a little bit more. So I actually met you through Circles of Wisdom, and I found you, and I was just so curious, and we had this amazing session that really blew my mind. And so I just had so many questions afterwards because I do think that you are deeply gifted and talented. So I just want to learn a little bit more about how did you get here?
Well, thank you so much for the compliments. I don't think of myself as gifted. I think of myself as committed to service. And so I think when people are committed to service, we get the inspiration and exactly what we need to help those that could benefit from our services. But my journey, like for many people, wasn't a linear one. As many of your listeners, I was a sensitive child. So I didn't really have any supernatural abilities. I was just super sensitive. I was really connected to nature. I was connected to how other people were feeling, was very observant. And I found a lot of peace being in nature and connecting that way. I grew up in the former Soviet Union. So where I grew up, there was no concept of religion. Everyone was supposed to be an atheist, and praying is something old ladies did. So it was really frowned upon. So I didn't really have a Western type upbringing that people would have in the United States, where it's common to go to church. We didn't have that, but I really always felt that there was something greater than us when I was in nature and connecting that way. I really, from a very early age, felt drawn to more of a Native American philosophy of life, where there's a spirit in everything and everyone, in rocks and animals and leaves. And then when I was a teenager, we came to United States, and I met a lot of spiritual people as a teenager. I was very open to everything. I tried to meditate, but I just couldn't sit still enough to do it. So everything developed kind of not in a linear fashion, but in starts and stops. I always loved crystals. I would find crystals when I lived in New Mexico, just out in nature, which was so cool. But I didn't quite know what to do with them. I just thought they were cool. And then as far as healing, I really wasn't aware of having any special gifts. I just always knew that I wanted to help people. And so because my grandfather was a psychologist, from the time I was a teenager, I knew that I wanted to study psychology. And then I became a social worker after college, and I worked in nursing homes. And I remember I would hold people's hands, especially people that were in the process of transition. And it's just something naturally I was drawn to hold their hand. And I realize now that I was probably sending them healing, but I didn't realize it at the time. I just thought it would be something that would comfort them. So then to make a long story short, or after I had my children, I had a lot of health issues after having my daughter. And after I had a difficult pregnancy and difficult childbirth, and I was in a lot of pain. And so I started because it was really difficult to function day to day. I couldn't really stand on my feet for more than 5 minutes without feeling pain. Walking was difficult. Stairs were impossible. I was looking for alternative solutions. It took a few years of being a patient and going on this merry-go-round of being a patient to figure out what to do. But I found my way to acupuncture. And I found that acupuncture was really helping me. And then in acupuncture, the woman that I was doing acupuncture with, she had a lot of students, and people would say, have you tried meditation? Have you tried anti-inflammatory diet? Have you tried this and that? So it really exposed me to a lot of different ways of thinking. And I've always loved Louise Hay. I'm a big fan of hers. Ever since I was in college, I've had her book, You Can Heal Your Life. So I'm a big believer that we can play a big role in healing ourselves. And so I started doing her meditations. And then I found as I was doing her meditations, my life did start to change. I had a sense of peace. My pain levels would begin to drop, almost like as if I'd gone to acupuncture. So that's what led me to exploring alternative ways, my own chronic health issues. But I just, I never imagined where taking those steps would lead.
Yeah, wow. I love your story. It's so beautiful. I mean, I feel like there's a lot to unpack. One of the things that really stands out about what you had mentioned is your time working in a nursing home. Like, I find that so fascinating because, most people are deeply uncomfortable with death and the transitional, like that process. And the fact that you were able to sit in that, at peace and be able to share like love and healing and energy, with this person and hold space for them to make that transition really is quite remarkable. And I guess it makes a lot of sense to me now why you would end up, with mediumship, just because, that's your comfort level. So I think that that's really beautiful. And then also I found that a lot of the healers that I've spoken with, a lot of the times their journey starts with their own desire to heal. So I mean, I love all of that. I love all that you were,
Thank you.
That you were saying. So can we talk a little bit about, so you are an energy healer as well as a medium and a channeler. So can you just tell us, for those that are like not as familiar, with channeling, with mediumship and with energy healing, just a little bit more about your practices?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So I teach classes at Circles of Wisdom, and I also do sessions there. And I also serve at the Greater Boston Church of Spiritualism. I'm a certified spiritualist medium, which means I have a certification, and I've proven that, there's evidence that other people can verify. And I've gone through a series of tests and other stuff. It was a long process. It's like, going to college.
Wow.
But we're all energy, right? We're all energy beings. We're made of energy. So when we're doing energy healing, we become of course, there are many different ways to look at this. So this is just my view. And I hope people listening and watching this will only take what resonates with them, because I'm just one person with one view of the world. There are many ways to look at it. The way I see it is we're all energy. And so I strive to become a clear channel through which God's love and light, or whatever you believe that higher, source, creator, divine light, the sun, whatever you believe that divine to be, it flows through me. But really, ultimately, it's love. And that love, the energy of love and peace and healing flows through my hands or by my intent to be a clear channel and bring that. And all it does is it reminds the person that I'm sending healing to come in resonance with that energy and become balanced themselves. I'm a big believer that we all have that capacity inside of us to self-heal. All you have to do is look at how animals in nature self-heal. They lick their wounds. A mother will naturally hold her child's hand if their child injures themselves. So it's just something that's, I feel like, from my point of view, is innate in us. And it's just remembering what we already know. I feel like because of many, many centuries of religious upbringing, people's power has been taken away from them because it was important for those in power to hold the power. So they made sure that only priests or priestesses or those in power were the ones with special quote unquote gifts. But the reality is each one of us has those gifts. We've just forgotten how to use them. So I'm really passionate about reminding people in terms of healing, whether it's emotional healing, psychological, mental, or physical, or spiritual, that we have that capacity to self-heal. And how that looks will be really unique and different for you. How I heal is different from you heal and how someone else heals. So we're just, in terms of healing, just a clear channel. It's not up to me to really direct that energy. I just trust that whether it's Reiki energy or, whatever is flowing through me, I trust that it's doing exactly what it's supposed to create a balance. And then, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I
energy.
think definitely with energy. I think that that's a beautiful, beautiful explanation. It's one thing that my Reiki teacher was like very, very adamant about. She was like, you are not the healer, like you are just being the channel. You are clearing, you are providing that, allowing that energy to flow through you so you can encourage the other person to heal themselves. And, I really, really appreciate you pointing out, how often throughout history, like, in the last couple hundred years, that we have been, the masses have been kind of disempowered and disconnected from their own, special gifts or powers or intuition or whatever it is you want to call it. And I think that, at this time, it's really special because so many people are realizing this and they're starting to really get in touch again and, kind of take that power back. And I just am so excited to see, what the future will look like as more people kind of step into that. And, there those that have taken power away or disempowered people, like how, I don't know, like I'm excited for this time period. I think that it's really, really important and we're very lucky to get to experience it. But I want you to continue on to mediumship and channeling.
Oh, absolutely. So mediumship is different from energy healing in that, so mediumship is you become a medium for energy. So usually it's energy of your deceased loved ones, which some people have trouble understanding that concept. I was certainly a skeptic when this was first appearing in my life. But through a series of synchronicities, I've had no choice but to start believing in it because of what's happened in my life. And so it's been just an amazing journey. And I feel so blessed to be able to be of service to spirit. So to me, mediumship is being an open channel through which, through training, you become an open channel through which deceased loved ones can communicate because energy can dissipate, but energy never dies. And so when I personally believe when we die, we transition into a different level of consciousness. And I personally believe that through training and being open and sensitive to energy, a person can become a medium through which spirit loved ones can communicate. And I'm a spiritualist, so I come from a long tradition of spiritualists because of my spiritual association. Since 1860s, spiritualists have been proving continuity of life. And in the beginning, spiritualists were closely tied with abolitionists, and it was a political movement, not just a religious movement, but it's considered a religion, philosophy, and science. in that each person really has to think for themselves and figure out their own truth. There's no dogma, but the one thing that we believe in is that we can communicate with spirit loved ones that have crossed over. So the way it works is really not anything strange, because you're a sensitive person, right? And I'm a sensitive person. So you know what your energy is like, Shireen, right? And I know what my energy is like. So through a process of meditation and just lots of practice, just practice over and over and over again in a circle, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week, and getting feedback from the evidence, I've learned how to listen, how to trust, and I've learned to use all my senses and develop those senses. So when I connect to spirit, I can feel an energy that's not me, coming close to me. And it used to be when I first started that I would get really, really nauseous, which was something, you can't make yourself nauseous. You can get it like, I felt like I was pregnant again. It was crazy. I would get so nauseous, and then all this information would just start spilling out of me. And people were like, oh, Alisa, like I can validate this, this, and this, and this. And I was like, how did I just do that? It was almost like this wave of love washes over me. For me to do a good reading, I really have to love that person that I'm reading for, and want them to have a good experience, and want them to remember what it's like to have their loved one there. So that's why I feel so blessed to be able to do that, because so many people are so lost in their grief. So many people have a hard time moving forward. And if they can get validation that they're through evidence, through specific things, that their loved ones are still there, that they still know what's going on in their life, that they're healthy now and they're pain-free. That's such a blessing for me to be able to share that. And so the way it works is I just start to give information. Some of it is very linear, and some of it is more metaphorical. Like I'll start moving my hands a certain way, and I'll be like, why am I going like this? And maybe that person was very judgmental or really focused on having their own way. So they'll show me things in a certain way. And then the person who I'm reading for will say yes, no, maybe. And, when I was first starting, I was still a skeptic, right? So I thought, well, maybe I'm just reading their energy intuitively. But I realized it's not possible, just because of so many synchronicities, so many things that have happened, the kind of messages that come through when they give a message. It's always about, love and compassion and letting go of judgment and having more joy. And the messages are not something that me consciously or intuitively I could ever come up with, because it just, and also I don't remember what happens in a session. People will come to me and say, well, remember you said this. I don't remember it. It just goes through me because I'm supposed to be a clear channel. Sometimes I'll remember bits and pieces. So it is using all the senses, but it's also being like, the only way I can describe it is when I'm doing mediumship, it's like being in love with the whole world. It's just this feeling of being in love and just being aware of something so uplifting, something so much greater than you. And even when I have spirits come who died by suicide or overdose, it's a really sad situation, right? And their vibration, sometimes when they talk about that, it will be in that sad low frequency, but then the messages are always uplifting, or at least that's how I was trained. And that's why I felt being in a spiritualist church, because I didn't want anything that was negative in any way. I wanted to feel safe to develop my gifts. I wanted it to be not scary, and I wanted it to be connected to light and to God, so that it was a safe space for me and for others.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that so much, because, to be honest, like when I deeply, deeply appreciate your explanation, because I will tell you that when it comes to mediumship in general, I'm always like, isn't it scary? Like, that's like my thought process. I'm like, but they're here, but they're not here. Like, aren't you freaked out? And I start thinking about, like, I don't know what I would do, like, if this person who has passed on just starts talking to me, like I don't like to be in the dark. And the way that you said it, made it feel so, I don't like, so innocent and beautiful and filled with love and like not freaky at all. So I'm like, I deeply, deeply appreciate that. And I feel like there's
Thank you
probably
for
tons
saying
of,
that.
I'm like, there's probably tons of people when they think of like mediumship or like communicating with the dead, they're thinking about, Ouija boards and like,
Right.
like poltergeist movies and like,
Right.
like that type of like freaky stuff. But the way that you said it just like really, really resonates with me. And I definitely appreciate it. And I also, another thing you said that really resonated with me was this idea of like, forgetting after you do a reading. So like, I know that when I do astrology readings, people sometimes email me or text me or call me like a year later and be like, everything you said came true. And I'm like, I don't even remember anything I said. Like, I'm like, I don't remember giving you that date. I don't remember telling you that. And like, I get it because it's like sometimes you go when you're so excited to help and support someone else's journey, you kind of like go into this beautiful zone and
Right.
I appreciate that. I love that. Okay, so
So
I
you
guess
do go in the zone. Yeah.
mhm. Oh, I didn't realize it took me many years to even realize that that was even what was happening. Like I just thought like, like you with astrology, it's a little bit different because
Sure.
you're training like a lot of it's memorization, right? So you're
Sure.
like learning kind of these terms and how they interact and like you're reading a ton and just observing
Absolutely.
like but what was happening to me was that once I'd gotten to a certain point and like as you get so familiar with the terminology, you start looking at a chart and you realize you're kind of being driven to look at certain things and like certain
Absolutely.
things are flowing out of you. So like it took me a while to realize that. And like, I don't know if it's channeling or just connecting with my intuition or jumping into the chart. Like I have no idea what it is, but I can definitely resonate with you on that.
I'm glad. Yeah. So it's similar with mediumship, but you're in mediumship, you're more consciously aware that you set that intent and you
Mm,
feel that energy come through. And
mm,
the if we could talk just for a minute, you brought up such an important point that so many people are scared of it, or they think of it as Ouija boards or like Ghostbusters. Could we talk about it just a bit? Because
yeah,
I
yeah,
was one of those people. I wanted nothing to do with mediumship. I had no concept of mediumship. I thought
yeah.
mediumship is like, I thought that we'll only find out what happens to us after we cross over, I was like,
Mm-hmm,
everything else is just philosophical debate.
mm-hmm.
But what happened to me is I had someone that I'd been very close to once die, and I found out on Facebook, of all places, that he died young. And I was
Oh.
just devastated because it was my ex-boyfriend. It was my ex-fiance, actually. So it was just really,
Wow.
really sad. And even though I hadn't talked to him in years, what happened was the cat had given me died. And so I was so devastated that my cat died. And I was like, I wanted to get in touch with him and find out, how he is, and let him know that this cat had died. Because that was like,
Yeah,
a big part of both of our lives. And that's how I
yeah,
found out that he died. And all of a sudden, something really strange happened. And I felt like I'd lost my best friend. And
yeah,
there was no
yeah.
explanation for it, right? Because we hadn't talked for years. But on a soul level, all of a
Mm.
sudden, I started getting signs from spirit, just like all kinds of synchronicities started to happen. Um, for
Wait,
example,
yeah, tell us.
um, I was, so I still had chronic health issues, and I had a medical appointment that was really important because I was going to get the diagnosis.
Mhm.
And so afterwards, I was kind of still in shock. And from the diagnosis, I went to sit outside in a cafe, and this bus went by, and it had this, and there was a guy sitting outside that looked just like the person that had died, just like him. I was like, this is so weird. He looks just so
Yeah,
much like him. As soon as I thought that, it was like, how sometimes you'll see things in slow motion. This
yeah.
bus goes by in slow motion, and it had an ad for an exhibit at Museum of Fine Art about
Uh-huh.
Egypt that said, next stop, the afterlife.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my God.
It was
That's
so funny. I was like, okay, this can't be a coincidence.
yeah.
because what happened was I have several friends who are open to mediumship, and they introduced me to that concept. And these are friends from, my youth and college. And he had come through in their readings to give a message to me to not worry about him, that he was okay. I was like, okay. So that started opening me up to mediumship. And then because of my health problems, I was just reading, and because of these experiences, I was reading anything I could get my hands on. Maybe your readers and listeners would be, maybe they've had that experience of just feeling thirsty, like spiritual thirsty, where you just want to learn everything you can. Yep. So I was like, is this real? Is he okay? Did he really cross over and he's still a consciousness? I just want to make sure that he's okay, because he died so young and it's so sad, right? So I started reading all these accounts of mediums and near-death experiences, all this stuff. And then I was reading Teresa Caputo's book, Long Island Medium. And she was talking about, have you heard of her?
Yes.
And she was talking about her anxiety and how she would feel very anxious in certain situations. And at that point, my anxiety started to really rev up. And I was just feeling more anxious in social situations. When people, for example, if I was at my child's soccer game, and people were just like getting really revved up and yelling, I felt like they were yelling at me, even though they weren't. And it was making me feel very anxious. So she had mentioned her teacher, Pat Longo, in her book. So for several months, I was like, I have to see this lady. I have to see this lady. I'm like, that's crazy. I don't know how to find her. And why would she want to see me? But then I just felt so guided to see her. I just felt so sure that she was going to help me with my anxiety and with my chronic health issues, because she's a healer out in Long Island. So so she actually did a Zoom, like a Skype session for me. So it was on video. And the woman who had set up the meeting as her assistant, she said, get ready, it's going to change your life. I was like, yeah, right. And it did. It really did. Because, we talked, and then she did what she does. She just sent me energy, and I felt everything she was doing. And I had like this amazing spiritual experience. I felt her cleaning me out of stuff. And then at the end, I just had this vision of angels, and I had a vision of all my loved ones like clapping and cheering me on. It was almost like a party. And it felt so peaceful and so loving and so beautiful. I didn't want it to end. It was, up to that point, one of the most incredible things I've ever experienced. And of course, all that was happening is she was becoming a clear channel and reminding me of my soul essence, right? And she said, oh, honey, you're going to be a healer and a medium. I was like, what? I'm like, no, thanks. I'm good. I just want to get better. I just want to have more energy and be pain-free. I'm good. I don't want to be a medium. Mediums are people I watch on TV or, something I read about, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful story. Yeah, continue.
And so what happened was she cleaned everything out. So my hands from then on were always vibrating. Like I felt like they were tingly and vibrating with energy. Maybe you've had experience, Shireen, with Reiki. And then from then on, I had no choice but to find a place to develop my abilities, because everything felt different. I felt clear, like the leaves seemed more beautiful and sharper. Just everything came more into focus. I felt lighter than I had been in years. And the pain part of it and healing that's been an ongoing process, because the physical already manifested in disbalances. And so that's been taking longer to heal, but the emotional and the mental and the spiritual, it was like I had clarity for the first time in years of who I was and what I was here for.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. That was so deeply personal. And it's so interesting how I wonder if you and your ex had some sort of soul contract.
Absolutely. So what I found is in a lot of mediums become mediums because there's a pattern that seems to happen where someone they cared about had died before them. And so because of that, they become aware of that. And the other person that died almost seems to be like a guide or a cheerleader for them. So I feel like, he's like my best friend on the other side, always supporting me, always cheering me on. And of course, others on the other side. It's like we have this feeling in life often that we're all alone, that people don't understand us, that we're different from others when we have these spiritual abilities. But the truth is, we have this amazing network that we're connected to out there. We can't see them, they're not real, but I believe there's a huge network of benevolent beings, our spirit loved ones, angels, who want to help us, who want to help support us in what we do. So I've come to realize we're not alone.
Yeah, I love that. I'm always like thinking, you have your spirit squad, which is like your ancestors, your loved ones, and like your guides. And like speaking of which, do you find that not only do you speak to people who have had lives on earth that are deeply connected, do you also talk to like guides and higher selves and angels, or is that kind of not your okay, go ahead.
It's totally my thing. I think I'm so glad you brought it up because it's so important. And before I was aware of myself being a medium, I remember I would lie in bed and I was in so much pain, and I would just feel like almost like because I'm so clairsentient and I'm a feeler, I would feel almost like angel wings brushing my cheeks. And of course, I didn't grow up with any concept of angels. But when I started learning about angels and connecting to them, I learned that almost every culture in the world has some kind of a concept of a winged creature that brings comfort. And so I really started connecting to that frequency, angelic frequency, and working with that frequency. It's a frequency that feels safe for me. And I often call on angels when I do my healing work as well. And, if I'm having a disagreement with someone or the energy of the room is kind of off, I will often call on angels just to bring a little more peace and healing to the situation. So I've seen how well it works too for children. When my daughter was younger and she was open to this, she had a lot of anxiety about, like getting on the bus, things like that, or she would wake up in the middle of the night. And so I taught her how to call on angels and to call on that energy, and that always seemed to help her, even with simple things like car sickness or anxiety on the bus, or feeling like she wasn't safe. Calling on those angels gave her an extra sense of security.
Yeah, I love that. I always think of when people talk about angels, there's like this one instance that I don't know if it was an angel, if it was a guide or what happened, but I remember I was like, oh my God, this is so dramatic. But I was like so distraught. I was like, oh, this boy doesn't love me. One of those moments. And I remember sitting outside and I was like hysterically crying, like having one of those like release moments of like, why doesn't he love me? Like one of those. And all of a sudden, I felt like a zing of energy shot and hit me. And all of a sudden, it came, and I can remember it feeling like it came from a very specific direction. And like, I felt its power, it hit me, and I just stopped crying, and I felt overwhelmed with love. And I remember being like, what the heck was that? Like, how do you go from like this like unconsolable, like complete dramatics to like no more tears, filled with love? And I remember being like, that didn't come from inside of me. That came from somewhere else. And I feel like that was like one of the, I feel like there was a couple different instances in my life where I was like, nope, this is real. Something's real. These things are real. But that was definitely one of them. But I think a lot about angels when I think about that moment. But
That's a beautiful story, Shireen. We all have been there crying unconsolably. And I've heard stories from people of when they were at their lowest, feeling that same love and support you described from angels, and understanding that's not something that that person can make themselves feel or do, because it feels almost, the kind of unconditional love feels almost otherworldly, right? That's the kind
Yeah.
of love we all long for.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like in the way that the power and speed at which it hit me, like it was definitely something that like someone sent me that.
Mm.
Like that came from outside. And like I'm sure we can, with proper training and work and dedication, we can, tap into that within, but that was something out there, which I think is definitely so beautiful. I have a
It is.
question for you.
Yeah.
Um, so can you tell, like, do you feel the difference between, when someone has had a recent lifetime, on Earth, or when it's just a being that maybe has never incarnated, or a being
Oh,
that
yeah.
is just, yeah, mhm,
That's a great, so you're asking, do I feel the difference between angels, spirit loved ones, and guides? Absolutely.
mhm,
So to me, again, this is my personal experience, and people will feel it in a very different way. To me,
mhm,
angels feel like fluffy, when you're a kid and you're eating that cotton candy. That's how angels feel to me, like fluffy clouds of love and
mm,
peace.
mhm,
It's just like a really warm, safe feeling. To
mhm,
me, spirit loved ones that have had a life here. So, in terms of dimensions, we're in a third dimension, and
mhm,
they're in the fourth dimension. And then angels are in a fifth and above dimension, and guides. So the fourth dimension, to me, spirit loved ones, they all feel very different. Each
mhm,
energy signature, we all have an energy signature. One thing I should mention, the way I was trained to communicate is I'm communicating as my energy with their energy. So I sit in what's called spirit power. So I increase my aura, and, I make sure all my chakras are open, and then I communicate spirit to spirit.
mm,
So I'm connecting to their energy, and I'm feeling what it was like to be them as a person. Um,
mm,
with guides, it's different. I am aware that they're in a different dimension. It's much more subtle for me.
mhm,
And this is where it's a very individual process for people, because I've done a lot of training to connect to guides, a lot of meditations, and also I've done a lot of teaching to help people connect to their guides. That's something that I was trained is super important when doing mediumship and healing. You're not doing this alone, you're just part of a team. So be a good
mhm,
team player, get to know your team. And
mhm,
of course, that's a concept that at first is very foreign, like
mhm,
who are these, what is out there. But I really believe, again, it's you're pulling your, all I think it is to me is there's the source, we're all part of the source. It's just energy beings who are dedicated to helping humanity, who are pulling their energy to help bring that healing and awareness and raise the levels of consciousness in humanity. So to me, I've learned that anyone can connect to all different aspects of divine. And I teach a course called Shine Like Divine, where we really travel around the world and examine how have cultures viewed divine in the past. And we'll learn about different, deities from Egypt to Rome to Ireland, to
I
Tibet.
want
And
to take
then,
this. I'm like, wait, when is the next one? I'm signing up.
oh,
I
thank
would
you.
totally want to take this. Wait, you have to tell us when's the next one.
It's second Tuesday of every month at Circles of Wisdom, and we do have a lot of fun, and they're recorded, so if you can't come, you can listen to. And then I teach a weekly spirit connection circle, and there we work on, whatever people want to work on, but we often will work on what people learned in that workshop, and also hone in connecting to their guides, connecting to their intuition, channeling, healing, whatever people want to talk about. It's a support group for people who are spiritual. But to make a long story short, what I've learned through kind of my exploration of divine is there are two ways you can look at it. You can look at it as a specific guide working with you. And I believe we each have like a main guardian angel and a main guide working with us. But ultimately, the most important connection we have is to our soul, because the more aligned we are to our soul, the more we can live our soul purpose. And our guides are really there to support us like teachers would, but they're not there to do the work for us. So when we connect to them, we're connecting to that guidance, but it's different from connecting to spirit loved one through mediumship, because the guides are never going to tell us what to do. They're going to help us be aware of certain things in our life, or help guide us in a certain direction, or help us feel immensely loved and supported. But they're never telling us what to do, because we have free will. Another way to look at it is anyone has the ability to connect an aspect of divine. So think of it as a music note or a frequency or a ray of light that you're connecting to. So let's say, like, I really admire Oprah Winfrey, for example. I'm not Oprah Winfrey, but because I admire qualities in her, I can start to cultivate those qualities of being brave or being strong, or, you know, being a trailblazer in my own life. So similarly, that's the other way to look at it. If you really admire Mother Mary, for example, you can, you're not going to be Mother Mary, but you're part of divine. So you can, by cultivating those qualities in yourself, you can strengthen those aspects of yourself that are already there, because I do believe divine is already inside of us. And again, it's about becoming empowered, right?
Oh,
taking that power back.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that. This conversation has been so amazing. And I like truly look forward to, you know, signing up for a few of your classes. Like I love the merging of history with mysticism and spirituality. I think it's just like so beautiful, and I can't learn enough about that stuff. So I'm like deeply inspired and excited. So
thank you for that. It is very exciting.
Yeah. So before we sign off, can you just share with our listeners, you know, how they can get in touch with you and how they can sign up for your classes and any new projects you're working on?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, first of all, I'd love to have you and your listeners, you know, come to my groups. I'm really passionate about helping people work with, you know, whatever way they want to grow. But my overall goal is to help people raise their vibration, raise their frequency, because I find once we're in a higher frequency, all the learning, all the connection to the guides and angels and our soul just starts to flow. So my goal is to help people get in that flow, but they can find me by emailing me at Alisa Lake 444@gmail.com, ALISA 444@gmail.com, or through Circles of Wisdom. I do sessions and I also teach classes there. So they can find me there under my name, Alisa Ozernoy.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I super appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to the Magic Hour podcast. If you want to learn more, you can find us on our website, www.mylittlemagicshop.com, and follow us on our Instagram at mylittlemagicshop. See you next time.